Hi everyone. In this video, I wanted to share some ways to improve performance of React Native applications. I'm a mobile developer who's made an application for thousands of users, and I hope to share some useful things that I've learned. I want to share some details about React Native specifically, and practices you can do to improve performance. React Native is a cross-platform mobile development framework allowing you to build for both iOS and Android in the same code base. When React Native first came out, the JavaScript engine that was bundled into the phone would communicate with the native parts of the phone over asynchronous JSON messaging. This was since improved to where the JavaScript engine, usually Hermes, can now synchronously control the view by holding C++ memory references to native functions, meaning it can synchronously control the view, update the view, etc. What this means is now there's a lot, React Native applications have sort of bridged the gap in performance between native applications, meaning there's more on the standpoint of as a developer that you can do to further reduce the gap and get near native application level of performance. Some of the things you can do is understand how React as a framework is used. So React Native is it uses the React framework. The only difference is instead of JSX components, you use the native components that React Native offers. And these are things like modals, views, FlatList, instead of using HTML because phones don't understand HTML. But these native components get translated to the respective components in Swift and Kotlin. So the React framework, what is that? React is a framework of reacting to change. When data gets loaded in, when a user clicks a button, something changes in the view. So React is all about that idea of reacting to change, and there's a big idea in React of re-renders, meaning as the state of the application changes, certain areas get re-rendered, meaning the function gets called again, and that the corresponding view gets updated. React maintains a virtual DOM, so it's a slight level of optimization, meaning a lot of sequential changes in state can get batched together in one update to the actual DOM. And if nothing really has to change in the actual DOM, meaning like nothing really in the layout is changing, even though some data may be changing, then React doesn't need to update the DOM. So those are some slight level of optimizations React as a framework offers. But when it comes to React hooks, that's where a lot of bread and butter is there to improve performance. There's the main state, use state. There's the main hook called use state, which allows you to remember information across renders. But the more notable hooks that offer performance gain are use memo and use callback. Use memo is all about memoizing expensive computations or remembering specific inputs, allowing you to not having to either compute outputs or renders some specific view. So the intuitive way to understand that is you remember the input. If you get the same input again, give the same output again. And that applies to both computed values and actual components. You can memoize components in React. Outside of those hooks, I would say the main ways to optimize performance, which I'll show you in a second, are using the FlashList instead of the FlatList native React Native component. So what I mean by this is there's a native FlatList component React Native offers, meaning you render a list of data sequentially in a vertical like scroll. The native FlatList component, what it does is it uses virtualization, which is good. only show me data that's currently on the screen. But when it comes to scrolling down and getting new data, and the old data is above, um, that the data that is out of the view gets destroyed in memory, and new data coming in gets created in memory. So this is good for preventing a lot of high memory usage, but is a significant bottleneck to performance. So I would advise you to use the FlashList component, which I am showing you right now, um, where the elements that their views get recycled and only the props get updated, um, which is really helpful. You're not constantly creating and destroying objects in memory, um, but you have to manage a lot of props and their updates. Um, and you need to ensure that as you're recycling views, you are properly updating the recycling key of the component to ensure that component gets properly updated. You don't see, in this case, a profile you saw much earlier, you don't see it later in the scroll. That's a key problem downside of recycling if you don't properly set that recycling key up. Outside of that, I would say the main ways to improve performance are debouncing. So I'll show you that here. As you're searching within a search bar, essentially don't spam your server with API calls. Use a timer and clear the timer um, to run an API call after a set amount of time. But as I keep typing, do not constantly spam my server with API calls. Instead, reset the timer and wait again. And then when that moment where I stop typing happens, then the timer completes, the API call is made, um, and and that saves a lot of load on the server. And this not only applies to search, it applies to filtering as well. So a lot of quick things that change how an API is called. That debouncing is a great idea to use there. Another thing is pagination. So I showed you the scroll, right? Um, as you scroll, I would say don't fetch too many things from the server. Um, Instead, fetch in smaller chunks, allowing you to quickly get information back from the server. And as you reach the end of something and you need more data, simply increment the page and get that data. So this requires effective ordering, effective indexing. But this is more outside of React Native and more database oriented. Clean up listeners. So within a chat window, um, well, like I have here, this has real-time listening. So as I leave, this is good for getting messages in real time, but when you leave, make sure to clean those listeners to avoid memory leaks. And last thing is cache aggressively. So when you're dealing with images that are frequently accessed or signed URLs, ensure you're caching those both on the server and the client. And on the client, cache them both in local storage and in memory. And this will help you load images a lot in other media a lot faster. Thank you, and I hope the information here is valuable.